Good morning and welcome again. Today's text is one of the many encounters of Jesus with the religious and civic authorities of his time. Jesus is in Galilee and we presume he's teaching. It doesn't say in the text, but it does say that some of the heavies from Jerusalem, some Pharisees and scribes, came down to either check on this Jesus of Nazareth, or maybe to try and trip him up, or to have something to hold against him. And they pick on a very, very poor, weak little rule or law. They complain to Jesus, "Why don't your disciples follow the traditions of the elders? Because they eat without first washing their hands." Now, it's hardly what you call a major breach of the law, is it? But that's the one they pick on because that's the only one they can detect. And that's not a bad little suggestion or recommendation for living in those days. Because if you're eating with your fingers and tearing the bread, it's not a bad idea to wash your hands beforehand. But to make that a law of God is pushing things a little far. And it's the hypocrisy in this that really riles Jesus. In fact, in the Gospels, if there's one thing that really seems to upset him on various occasions, it's hypocrisy. And that's why he says to the Pharisees and the scribes here, "It's of you people, that Isaiah said, they worship me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me." And in other times, he says to his disciples and the people following him, "Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. Beware of how they introduce into the mass poison, false doctrine, things that favour their own well-being." And he gives the concrete example. He says, you have your own law which is called korban, which means that if somebody says, "I am promising all I have to God," he doesn't use any of that, or he's not obliged to use any of that, to help his needy parents or siblings. Because it's dedicated to God, therefore he can use it until he dies. And that flies against the fourth commandment. Love your father and your mother. So Jesus calls them hypocrites. He advises the people to be wary of their teaching. In fact, he goes on later to call them whitened sepulchres. They're pretty on the outside, but inside they are full of dead men's bones. And so he's not what you'd call overly gentle with the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. And I was thinking, what about our own situation? Have we as church not also received a little bit of a correction for having taken the high moral ground for so long? When it became revealed the presence of clerical pedophilia. And our hypocrisy in many ways, because we were not living up to the standards that we were professing. The other one I think of on a local level is domestic violence. How many people who actually are violent at home are not angels in the street or at work? There's a hypocrisy there. And there's another one which I experienced when I was in Peru. We have a custom there that most people would be affiliated with devotion to some saint or some image. And each year there'd be the annual fiesta in honour of that saint or image. And the number of people who would appear at the time of the fiesta, they would come to the Mass, they would put on their habit, and they would carry the image in procession to be seen. Now, you wouldn't see them around the church, you wouldn't see them in civic groups, helping the area, helping the region, helping the locals. No, but they would appear once a year. And I must confess, I used to maybe judge them, unfortunately, but as hypocrites. They were so holy on this one day of fiesta, when we'd have a novena, maybe of preparation. Then we'd have the Mass. Then we'd have a procession right through the village or the area of the city. And then you'd have a blowout of the fiesta after it all. It was always great fun and always a whole religious element there. But these fellas were, I considered, real hypocrites. And the other little one, again, domestic here, and I've seen it, and maybe I've done it, but in a home, and the parents are trying to teach morality to their kids. Tell the truth, always tell the truth. And so the doorbell rings, and the kid goes towards the door, and the father says, "Tell them I'm not in." And so he goes out to the kitchen. So the kid opens the door, and they say, "Could we speak to your father, please?" "Oh, I'm sorry, Dad says he's not in." Just a bit of a trip up. All right, so just beware of hypocrisy. At home, at work, everywhere. Because it does corrupt the fabric of our society. And it does corrupt the dignity of the human person, especially the hypocrite. Okay? God bless you. Have a good week, and with a bit of luck, we'll see you next Wednesday. God bless.